and then go ahead and start with my opening remarks. These are not the SGA Tuesday meetings. This is the town hall outside of our SGA weekly meetings. I see that question in the chat. That's not what this is. No problem. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our third town hall. Previously, we have used this forum to continue a discussion between our students and our administration about racial injustice and what UHCL is doing to create a change. Today, we have questions collected from our senators across all colleges regarding an array of topics and concerns students are facing during COVID-19. SGA is grateful to be able to provide a safe space to reflect and discuss the university's plan going forward. I'm thankful to be able to facilitate this dialogue and be a part of this change. This town hall is structured with two main components. The SGA Senate has curated a list of questions based off student concerns mentioned in the previous town halls. The first hour will be moderated by me, Hibba Loya, and I will be asking questions from the list of preset questions sent to administration 2 weeks ago. The next hour will be dedicated towards an open forum where students will have the opportunity to ask their questions and receive a live response from administrators. As a facilitator for this town hall, I will be reading student questions and comments from the chat. Quick disclaimer, these questions and comments are not a reflection of my personal opinions. As a student advocate, my goal is to amplify the student voice. Please remember to keep your questions and statements professional, even if they are submitted anonymously. Thank you to the UHCL administrators who have taken the time out of their busy schedules to attend this town hall. In order to address as many student concerns as possible, please be mindful of our limited time when responding to students. For those of you who are joining us on Instagram Live, after the 1 hour mark, we'll be taking a 2-minute break where you will be disconnected, but we'll be back on immediately after. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Dr. Blake with her opening remarks, but I think that's going to be Dr. Hart.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules during these difficult times to participate in our town hall in this forum. I think that, we are in the midst of voting season right now. And so, some eyes are on our campus as we are a polling location, but it just goes to emphasize the fact that it is so important to participate in the civic process, whether it's voting or whether it's participating in town halls. My appreciation goes out first and foremost to our students who are actively engaged in their UHCL experience and are participating in this town hall to share concerns and thoughts and to directly let the administration know how they feel and where their concerns are, and also appreciation for our faculty and staff who are participating in this town hall as well. I will conclude by saying we've had some very good and robust conversations with our first few town halls, but most importantly, we have action items that have taken place from those town halls. And so what we as administration are attempting to do moving forward is to make sure that we begin to not be part of the problem, but part of the solution. And so on this campus, the administration, taking the words from VP Denny, we are trying to influence our scope of responsibility. And VP Denny, I may have messed that up, but the point I'm trying to make is we want to emphasize those things we can control as administration and really focus on those and have tangible outcomes. And so we will shift how we communicate with our students and start moving towards some very specific student engagement, some very specific opportunities to address the concerns of our students and move from a micro level to more of a macro level as it relates to our discussion and topic points. So just once again, wanted to thank everyone for participating.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Hart. I just want to add a little bit about our town halls. So these previous town halls, especially the last one, have definitely been a little tense and emotionally charged, to make an understatement. Some may believe that this endeavor is unproductive and just an elaborate way to attack administration. However, these town halls have produced results. Dr. Hart has created a work group, and though they are still getting their feet under them, it is an official place dedicated to implementing changes. The police department and Chief Miller have been making a huge effort to find ways to make themselves more approachable and gain the trust of the students they have previously been unable to reach. We've been able to hear from Mark Denny and the efforts he is making to make the university's finances more understandable to students. And Dr. Blake recently committed UHCL to work with a regional collaboration of 15 universities to work towards ending racial and economic challenges faced by students. We believe that the above mentioned people have been influenced by these town halls for the better, and thank everyone who has participated with us in the past and will continue to participate in these important dialogues in the future. Right. So I think without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started into the list of questions that was sent out. Um, Dr. Hart, I believe you're taking point on these questions, correct?
Let me unmute myself. Actually, we as the administration, specifically the VPs, will take point on all of the various questions. So go ahead and ask and we will jump in as needed.
Okay, so the first question says, we notice and appreciate the UHCL faculty for working hard to prepare the materials for the online courses we have to take due to COVID-19. Many professors appear to be creating assignments to replace the time we spend in class because they wish to ensure that we are learning. However, this increases the workload and the strain on students who used to just have to prepare for class. Is there a way that administration can help our professors ease their burden as well as ours? We could all use more understanding like we had when the quarantine first occurred.
So Hiba, this is Steve. I'm going to go ahead and take that question. Thank you for listing it, and thank you for inviting us all here. So I want to start by just recognizing that we all see the strain that COVID-19 is taking on students. And I want to start by ensuring that students know we at UHCL have various support services that we can provide, that we are providing for your financial and health needs. And so I'll just point out, you only have to go to our webpage and look under the health alert link, and you can see immediately where you can get access to those resources. But I'm going to focus my answer to respect time also on the academic preparation of the courses, because that's really the heart of the question, I believe. And I want to share with you some of the approaches we're really taking to work with both faculty and students. First of all, I want to say to all students listening, and hopefully this is a message that students are aware of, that if you're struggling in a course that you're in at this point, your first step is to reach out to the faculty member. And if you've tried that, you can certainly seek out talking with the program or department chair. I think what you're going to find is that faculty understand the stresses that students are dealing with, as do department chairs and program chairs. And so that should be the first step. I want to also recognize that the Student Success Initiatives Division of Academic Affairs is going to continue to use various modes of communication out to our students so that they know what the existing learning resources are out there to help those students as they deal with courses in one of our 4 instructional modes. And there are sections on the Blackboard homepage that I'll provide those links to SGA. But I just want you to know there are tips out there from how to get onto courses to, really importantly, how to be successful in online learning. So again, the first part of this answer is resources we're focused on. The next part is to really be responsive to the concerns that you're hearing in the frame of that question. And I want to share with you that Academic Affairs has already done a small pilot survey with about a dozen students where we're trying to gauge, working with them, what are the things that are happening that work well in classes, and what are the challenges they're facing in their classes. So we're asking questions such as, what's working, what's happening in your class that helps you learn, and how do faculty facilitate your learning. And we took that information, and Dr. Timothy Richardson, our AVP for Student Success and Initiatives, is going to build a larger survey to go out to all students. So, and he's going to be engaging faculty in that process. So I think to making certain we're meeting the students' needs academically beyond the resources that we currently have is to really gauge what are those challenges. And when we get that information back, that's going to be provided not just to faculty, but also to students to make sure that we can, through SGA, we can see what the issues are. I hope you know that we're committed here to helping students address this academic challenges they're facing. And while I'm not going to answer it here because it's the student forum, rest assured that Academic Affairs is working with, and the colleges are working with Faculty Senate and faculty to make sure that we're also working with them to provide various mechanisms to support them with the workload issues. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berberich. Does anybody have anything to add? Also, there's a follow-up question in the chat that says, will you take into account students who do not normally take online classes when analyzing the survey data?
Absolutely. So I think, what we did in the pilot is we tried, there's those 4 instructional modes. And I think part of our support has to really tailor to the various ways that students learn. So yes, the answer is yes.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next question. We have heard many instances of issues with exams given by ProctorU. Does the university have any plans to review our relationship with ProctorU and the impact it has on our student population due to their required procedures? Would the provost and the academic deans be willing to participate in a separate town hall moderated by SGA or someone in student affairs?
Okay, so that once again, I'm going to take that one, Hiba. The short answer is yes, that the university is reviewing proctoring options on campus. And I hope as I explain what we're doing, everyone will see. I'm not certain that we need to create a town hall here with the deans and myself, that it's necessary. First of all, I want to share with you Dr. LeBrian Gaskins, our AVP for University Computing and Telecommunications, Chief Information Officer. He's tasked a committee called the University Technology Advisory Committee, or I'll call it UTAC for simplicity. And they're out there, they're actually looking at both the faculty and importantly, the student issues around our current proctoring options. And just so everybody knows, although the question was about ProctorU, we currently provide proctoring through either ProctorU or Respondus. And the committee is going to be putting forward recommendations on how proctoring solutions to better serve our students and our faculty. And I want you to know, even though they're collecting this information about our current use, that committee and the instructional designers are currently working with ProctorU. So as issues come up, we are committed to finding the best options to move forward. We have to balance the issues of privacy, access, fairness for all students. We understand that. So as the survey process is going through and they're collecting the data and determining what recommendations moving forward, I want to make certain that I'm clear that I strongly recommend that if students are having issues with an online proctoring, whether it be ProctorU or Respondus, that they can report that to the support center, either by email at supportcenter@uhcl.edu or through the telephone line. I think the last extension is 2828, because it's important that we hear this. That's also going to get to UTech, but that's also the mechanism by which we can resolve the issues here. So those recommendations are going to come to my office as provost. And again, in my desire to be transparent here, I want to share those findings with the Student Government Association and obviously with faculty through their colleges and the Faculty Senate. I think as I sort of conclude this, a couple key pieces. We're going to continue to use proctoring, I know that. And faculty are going to have more than one option. And I think as we identify challenges that can't be resolved by the company to our satisfaction, I'm confident we're going to have solutions. They're either going to come out of those recommendations from UTAC, or we're going to have from the committee, or we're going to have discussions with faculty and students to find that solution. So I think at this point, the takeaway is let us know where the challenges are. We're working on those that we have heard to find resolution, and we are looking for solutions in terms of recommendations from UTAC. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, there's actually resources for students on how to do proctoring that I'm going to send to SGA also as another link that's on our website. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Berberich. Our next question here says, the switch to distance and online learning was compulsory for most of our students and faculty. The pandemic has created many obstacles in the learning process, from technology issues to increased workloads. Students are having a harder time than ever keeping up with their coursework. Will students be afforded the opportunity to opt into the satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading system for the duration of the pandemic?
Okay, so I'm going to take that one also. So I want to make sure we're all clear. When we started the satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading system, it was put in place in spring semester. And we did that because we were forced to immediately convert from teaching in a variety of modes to 100% online. So it was really intended to address the immediacy of the conversion to online. And that gave us time to sort of align our instructional modes, give our faculty time over the summer to prepare their courses for the fall. And so I want to note that the extending of the SU option, it's also going to create issues we know around GPA calculations for scholarship, grad school applications, transferability to other institutions. We knew going into this, but nevertheless, we did it because of the urgency of the situation. So when we move this fall to those 4 instructional modes of the bimodal, the online synchronous, online asynchronous, and the online asynchronous synchronous combination, we returned to the standard grading system. That was the intent. It was there as a temporary as we were preparing to get our courses aligned for the fall. So that's all. That completes
Okay.
my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burbridge. Does the campus police department have a system to keep the officers accountable? What is it? How does it work? And who's in charge of the system?
Okay, that's a good question, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. And yes, we do have an accountability system, and it's in the form of our policies and processes that are constantly under review. And I can't get to all of them here in this forum, so I'm going to touch on a couple that are key. And if anyone has any questions or wants to go deeper into these things, the invitation is always open. I don't care if you're a student, faculty, staff, what your position is. You can always reach out to me and we can get together and go over these things and answer your questions. And I think you'll be surprised at how robust our system is. So, you know, we have about 130 SOPs, or standard operating procedures. We have about 30 general orders. But out of that, one thing that we do have in place specifically is a policy called the accountability system. So it, in short, governs system-wide with all component campuses, the policy on discipline, dismissal, and the procedures associated with that, including the investigation types and all. So it's not just us monitoring ourselves, that's a system-wide policy. So we also have another policy called early intervention system. And I've got a bunch of bullet points on what it means, but in short, our Office of Professional Standards, which is Kelly Reed, if anyone has met her, she's our accreditation manager and clery compliance officer. She reviews all documentation on officers that's put into their file, write-ups, good things, negative things, and she makes an evaluation annually, actually quarterly, that whether or not there's some kind of intervention needs to occur. So if an officer is getting particular types of complaints, we can isolate that in advance and mitigate any problems down the road. So, you know, there's a lot of information there that keeps us accountable in that one policy alone. Then we have, you know, as most police departments do, we have our body cameras as well as in-car cameras. And so anytime we have a call for service or contact with a citizen or anything, everything is recorded. So we just actually purchased new cameras. We expect them to go online later this semester once we get them set up. So that's very valuable information. It protects the integrity of all contacts that we have with, you know, our community and anyone that we come in contact with outside the community. So in addition to those types of recordings, our dispatcher recordings, any telephone calls that come into dispatch, and any radio communication that occurs between the officers and dispatch. This is all recorded and logged. And it becomes very helpful, valuable whenever an investigation needs to occur. Let's say there's a complaint or any other kind of investigation, we retrieve that data. And then in addition to those, anytime we have a call for service, no matter what it is, it's a door unlock or a criminal event, or whether or not the officer on views an incident or they self-initiate an event with, let's say, a traffic stop, everything there is documented in our records management system. So the dispatcher's making notes, the officer's making notes, and that's a permanent record as to our activities. And so in a perfect world, in addition to that, we'd like two officers to respond to certain types of calls. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, but everything's recorded and documented. And one of the other components is we have a formal complaint system as well as commendation system. And that's available on the website. It's public information. We also have that information in our lobby where you can actually get the forms. So if there's ever an issue and you feel like something improper was done by one of our officers, we have a formal system by which those things are investigated. And everything is very thorough, and that process is actually governed at the system level. So that's very robust and helpful, and it also works in conjunction with HR practices and policies. So we have that in place. And then lastly, and we've talked about this in the past, us being accredited, we really fall in the less than 2% of all campus police departments that are accredited. And in short, they have the required standards for us to abide by. And abiding by standards is not the end all be all. What we have to do is we have to show proof that we're abiding by these standards that are set in place. And so every 4 years we are technically audited. It's called an on-site process. And that keeps us on the path by the accrediting body. So like I said, these are just a few things. We have many, many policies. Hibba and I have talked. She was unaware of just how stringent, we are as far as the way we operate. And if you have questions that can't be answered in this forum because of time constraints, please contact me, policechief@uhcl.edu. Just send me an email, and we can either meet virtually, we can meet in person, social distancing and masks, and go with it.
Chief Miller. I also just want to remind everybody that there is a link in the chat. For those of you guys who have just joined, there's a link for you to be able to submit anonymous questions that I will read out during the open forum section. We're receiving your questions and I will be reading them out loud.
I'd like to add something before we move on real quick. Chief Miller has done an excellent job of articulating how stringent and how thorough our processes are. And I just want to give one very quick example that demonstrates that we go beyond having these processes. Our police department absolutely live them. And I know that's a critical point to this, is without giving the details, we had an incident. It was a minor thing. But we had an officer who had to respond to a call by himself. We couldn't manage we didn't have the staffing to have two people. And it was a non-event. And then the next evening, we had kind of a follow-up incident to that event. And a statement from a witness identified a very small inconsistency in the report provided from the previous night's event. And that spurred an investigation because our police department really does leave no stone unturned whenever there's just some simple things that just don't add up and don't connect. And at the end of this independent investigation, it was identified that while the action that the officers took was absolutely appropriate, and actually they were doing what was in the best interests of the person that they were trying to respond to and help, however, that officer had failed to give a full, complete, and accurate report. And that simple thing did result in disciplinary action with that officer, simply because what they did was not the challenge. It was the incompleteness and the inaccuracy in their report, and that was not tolerated at all. We have a zero tolerance on any of those types of issues. And so I want to stress that all the processes put in place and the checks and balances on our police department guarantee that small things don't go unchecked that can lead to large things, and absolutely large things don't go unchecked. And they really live these policies and procedures as Chief Miller articulated. And I just want to take a moment to stress that, because that is the most important piece. It's not just that you have all these checks and balances and processes, but that they're truly infused in how you operate. And at the Clear Lake campus, they truly are. And I want to stress that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denny. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. What procedures does the university have to ensure the safety of students with disabilities in the case of a fire or evacuation? Who performs these procedures, and where can students find this information?
I'll take that. Hopefully many of you know, our emergency manager director, Al Black, oversees our emergency management planning and response process. And I'm sure you may have seen them in the stairwells throughout all of our buildings. We have emergency evacuation systems for any student that cannot navigate a stairwell, which obviously when you have certain types of emergencies, depending on what they are, your elevators are not your primary evacuation process. And so we have these evacuation assistance aids. We have trained personnel within both our emergency management team as well as our police department to operate these. And if you were to go to the UH Clear Lake website for our emergency management, there's our emergency evacuation plan, and there is specific guidance for students with disabilities. In addition to that, we have a system of what we call floor captains. And so they are for each building, and for each floor on that captain, each building, we have a captain identified, and that is a UH Clear Lake employee that has the responsibility to ensure that an area has been fully evacuated and to specifically alert for assistance if we have any students or staff or faculty or community members that require assistance. Now, obviously, that was a new process that was being brought online and had been completed, but we were starting to do training with those captains before COVID happened. And then now with the campus not being occupied, we need to restart those. In addition to that, we have identified that there still may be gaps and challenges in really fully serving our student, staff, and community members that have disabilities across our campus. So we have an initiative, and it's in its early planning process. And before that gets finalized, it will be routed through our emergency management planning committee, as well as to our constituent groups for feedback. But it is a campus ambassador initiative that would provide support, a whole host of supports across our campus for students, staff, and visitors with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denny. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next question here. A large majority of the student body at UHCL has been financially impacted by the pandemic. What is UHCL doing to assist impacted students and lower the cost of tuition during the pandemic?
I will again take that. The first thing is, what are we doing to lower the cost of the institution? And access and affordability are some of the most key priorities and values of this institution. All of the things that we believe higher education can provide people, we accomplish none of those if students cannot afford to attend higher education. We recognize there's a host of challenges with that, Primarily, most is that state funding has continued to fail to keep pace with the cost of higher education as we move forward. And that is going to continue, that trend is going to continue, and we're absolutely challenged with that. And across the nation, that is a challenge. Some of the things that University of Houston Clear Lake does is we provide 10% of our designated tuition in the form of financial aid for low income and financially challenged students. And that is in excess of $5 million every year that we provide in financial aid, discounts, tuition assistance, and so forth for our students. In addition to that, we receive directly almost just short of $3 million from the CARES Act for financial aid, of which I don't have the numbers in front of me, how much of that has been distributed to students both last year and this year, but it is in excess of $2 million that has already been distributed, and we have until next spring to fully distribute to our students all of those financial aid dollars. Now, the Department of Education, when they set up the guidance for that, set some fairly strict requirements that limit us in how easily we can assist students. But we are following the guidance by the Department of Education, and we plan to fully disperse those funds to our students. In addition to that, with the pandemic, the university spent of its own funds in excess of $100,000 providing technology support for students. That was the discounted laptop purchase, that was cameras, other things like that, to be able to support our students and enable them to access distance education, whereas before they may not have been doing that from home. They may have, even if they had an online course, they may have been coming on campus and using our computer labs to do that. And because of COVID, those things were challenged. And so we've provided, like I said, over $100,000 to do that. And then finally, the third thing, as a university initiative, again, to support our students, the university committed an additional $2 million in resources for financial aid tuition for our students. So in total, we have provided in excess of $10.5 million in financial aid support to assist our students with the COVID-19 challenges. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll put this in the chat, is the link for students to apply for the COVID-19 Emergency Fund applications.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Denny. The next question we have here is, the SGA Organization Fund is financed through the student's fee. At the end of every fiscal year, the fund is swept, then replenished with the maximum amount, which is $22,500. Where do the SGA funds get swept to? Who controls the funds once they have been swept? And how have the SGA funds been reallocated in the past?
So I'll take this one, President Loya. So traditionally, the unused funds are swept annually. Those funds are reallocated to the divisional reserves of the various departments where those funds were allocated to. Although the funds are swept, it's important to know they're still available upon request to use for student special initiatives which impact and engage student learning. They're also used for one-time funding to individual units that request special expenditures, and they're also used to assist with mid-year unbudgeted student programs and initiatives. So although the funds are swept, they are still made available to those who make one-time requests.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hart. The next question we have here is, UHCL sits on a nature preserve, houses the Environmental Institute of Houston, and offers a BS of environmental science with varying specializations. Considering the university's close relationship with the environment, what campus-wide programs has UHCL developed to reduce the university's carbon footprint and impact on the environment?
I'll take that one for a response, Hiba. I agree. We sit in the middle of a beautiful environment, and our campus has taken it seriously, that preservation of that environment, as well as the long-term look at our carbon footprint. Some of the initiatives that we have done is we have the Institute for Human and Planetary Sustainability, and I know President Loya, you have connected with them, Ms. Evelyn Morales, and going to definitely look at opportunities for students to continue to engage and push for sustainability and environmental friendly initiatives across our campus. We have a challenge at anything that is reducing our carbon footprint. If you go back to the earlier conversation I was talking about access and affordability, is that we have to balance very carefully everything that we do in how does it impact the cost of our operations for this university, and how does that cost then impact our students. And so it's a balancing act as to what initiatives we can and will do that push towards environmental initiatives. However, oftentimes those environmental issues can actually generate cost savings. As a perfect example, the university has embarked on a energy performance initiative. It's a fairly complicated process, but in a nutshell, what it does is you work with a engineering firm. They identify steps the university could take that would reduce our energy consumption, electricity, water, natural gas, so on. And then through this process, you can go out and issue debt to pay for the work that will generate those energy savings. And then you pay back the debt from the savings of your lower consumption of energy. So there's no additional cost. Oftentimes your savings in energy is actually even lower than the cost of repaying the debt. And so you have the lower consumption of energy and lower operating costs. And for that reason, that was a simple decision, and the university is pushing forward and embarking on that. This is I won't say the culmination because we're not there yet, but I initiated that plan over a year ago. And it's moving forward now. Obviously, COVID-19 has significantly impacted our progress, but we're now moving forward. We have a partner, and we're moving forward on that. Other initiatives that can reduce your carbon footprint, such as self-generation of solar and other means and things like that, if they don't pay for themselves, and an institution of our size could potentially be challenged. We are looking at all of those, but if they don't pay for themselves in the energy savings, then the challenge is well, then how do you pay for those things? And again, we have to have that affordability and access, and be very cognizant of that and how it impacts our students. So to that, I encourage though, and I have in conversations already with our SGA leadership, provided some examples from other institutions and other things that they have done where the students have collectively said, this is a priority to us and we recognize that there's a cost associated with achieving those priorities, but we agree with that cost. And that's really what you need to have if an initiative that reduces our carbon footprint is not cost neutral or cost savings. You need to have a broader campus conversation to demonstrate that students are supportive of that and that they recognize that there may be costs included in that, at least on the short term, to achieve those outcomes.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Denny. The next question we have here is, as a university, our actions reflect our values. Following this thought, the beliefs of our strategic partners should align with the new core values. How do we find out more about our partnerships and if those with whom we associate have a similar set of beliefs and actions?
President Loya, Dwayne Busby, Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'll take on that question if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Excellent. The Office of Strategic Partnerships has moved from value building over to SSCB 3203, but we maintain our open door policy. Students are more than welcome to come by and encouraged to visit our office, as well as visit our website and or attend our events and programs that we currently have with our partners. Jobs for Hawks, which is delivered by Handshake, houses all our collection of partners. Students have access to those companies. In those company profiles usually include a description of the company and the company's website. We add partners or handshake on a regular basis. Those are resources that are currently available to students. We also do our due diligence in vetting our corporations, our government organizations, and non-government organizations before accepting them as partners. We are typically introduced to those companies by a reliable source and trustworthy faculty member. After this discovery conversation, we do a site evaluation, which means we go to the site. We meet with decision makers, such as C-suite executives, senior management, and or human resources. Before assigning an intern, an affiliation agreement must be approved by and signed by the company. We then send the agreement to the appropriate college dean, internship advisor, and finally submit that signed agreement to contracts administration here on campus. At the end of an internship, another set of evaluations are completed by students, by a faculty advisor, by the site advisor. Also, before, during, and after, students are encouraged to provide us with feedback about their experience at the partnership site. So in short, we try to do our best to understand, to evaluate, and reassess all our partners, such that when we send our students there, we know the companies and the partners that we're sending them to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Busby.
To further, I must include our website so that you'd also be able to connect with us, find out about our events and programs that are occurring on and off campus and during this pandemic virtually. And I'll also send our email address, such that if you have any further questions for me, please send it to me.
Thank you. Now we move on to our last question from this preset list of questions before we move on to the open forum. Again, I'm going to remind you guys, Victoria, if you could paste the link again one more time. Students, faculty, staff, everybody, feel free to submit your questions. You can submit them anonymously, questions, concerns, comments, or experiences, and I will get to them after this question. With the President of the United States calling COVID-19 the China plague on national television, what is the university doing to combat COVID-fueled racism, such as discriminatory actions against Asians in America?
If I can unmute myself, I'll take the first response at that, Hiba.
Yes.
One of the things that I think it's important for everyone to recognize, as a state institution, we are expressly prohibited from addressing directly any political messaging, individual politicians, or any federal or state political actions. However, having said that, we absolutely have a role that we can play on any of these things, and that is by giving accurate information and not contributing to any disinformation that may be coming from any party, and to speaking truth on topics related to COVID-19 or to discrimination in any form. And I think that that is something that this university, in collaboration across our entire campus with our students, with our staff, with our faculty, makes a very strong effort to do. And that is to speak truth and to address incidents and incidents of discrimination in any form whenever they occur.
And the only thing that I would add to that is I think everyone needs to recognize and acknowledge we have a very clear and present anti-discrimination policy on our campus and throughout the U of H system, which prohibits any type of discrimination, whether direct or indirect. And if there are incidents related to this type of discrimination, or if they escalate into something more serious, they will be addressed with our Title IX and Equity and Diversity Office, and also could be addressed through the Student Code of Conduct process as well.
Thank you.
And HR as well.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. McGonigal?
No, ma'am, I agree with everything that was said, and we're not tolerant of discrimination, and we address it immediately.
All right, so thank you for our amazing administrators for answering our questions. We've hit close to the 1 hour mark on our discussion, and we'll be taking a short 2-minute break to give our attendees an opportunity to collect their thoughts and prepare for the Q&A session. Feel free to use this time to type your questions in the chat box, and we will address them shortly. If you would like to submit your question statement anonymously, please click on the link in the chat. For those of you who are joining us on live, you will be disconnected, but don't forget to rejoin us for the second half. All right, that was a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. We'll now be resuming our discussion. The first question we have here, I just want to make sure Dr. Hart, Mr. Denny, y'all are still on. Perfect. First question we have here is this the only foreseeable absence of Dr. Blake? I understand this is the first town hall she is not here, even if someone is here to report to her, but I want to ask now and not wait to see if this is a change or an isolated incident. While Dr. Blake has exhibited problematic behavior and language at these events, her presence makes a difference and it shows this vital forum is a long-term priority of hers.
Let me jump in if I could on this. We provide a wide variety of engagement and communication opportunities across our campus with our students. We have our shared governance process, which is primarily driven at just what it says, a shared governance. And so that is how we make the governance decisions of what and how this university does. And our students are absolutely our partners in that. That's the shared aspect of it. It is university management, it is faculty, it is our staff association, it is our student government. And we have that as our primary means by how we engage and address how the university administers itself and responds to processes. In addition to that, we have numerous student advisory councils across our campus, as well as we have regular participation with leadership and with our student government and with our student organizations and constituent groups. And I feel that our best mechanism going forward is to participate fully in these existing forums that we have that bring forward the student voice, the student engagement, and are expressly established to direct how the university responds and addresses challenges as they come forward to our campus. And so I would, again, I would encourage that is our best mechanism for engaging across the campus, both with our president and with our senior leadership and our student government to address challenges as they come up.
There is a follow-up question to that one. Why is President Blake absent? Isn't hearing the student voice a main priority for her, especially since she has said in a summer town hall that she didn't even read the report that followed the town hall? How can we have any confidence in administration if they don't show up for the students?
So let me just jump in and say, the vice presidents are here in president. We are representing the president of the university for this town hall. I think it's a little inaccurate to say that she's not available, because what she's actually done since the second town hall, she has actively created very specific and detailed forums and action item forums for various groups that have reached out and said that they are challenged by some of the issues on campus and in the community. Although the president is not present specifically at this town hall, I can assure you she's actively working to provide opportunities for our students to engage with administrators and to move beyond the actual conversation and move to action items, so we can create an environment on campus where our students are proud to be UHCL Hawks.
Right. Okay. A follow-up question. Recently, it was shared that links to the virtual shared governance meetings are only shared with a select few. Are students no longer able to sit in on those meetings?
I'll address that initially.
Also, before that, really quickly, I'm so sorry, but students are still confused. Is she coming to future town halls or not? That's a question in the chat.
Yeah, I understand.
No. Let me just say this. That is so. Once again, I can't say that the president is not coming to future town halls. Our town halls, the original town hall was to address a specific conversation or a specific topic. I know that if we have specific detailed issues that come up, we will work to make sure that the president is present for those. We can't speak to whether or not she'll attend these specific town halls, but she will be present and actively participate in other student forums that will address certain issues that students are concerned about.
To reiterate what Dr. Hart was saying is that, the town hall forum is when you have a specific issue and have a conversation about it. For an ongoing relationship and engagement, we have established processes and engagement, and we want to reinforce and strengthen those, because they will be the better vehicle for that ongoing conversation relationship, as I have discussed, which leads me into the next question you had.
I do want to add, though, that the purpose for having this structure during this time in our lives is because we are in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. And although we might have had other ways to deal with issues, we were not in the middle of a global pandemic that everybody is being affected by through multiple avenues. But you may continue.
To address the question of our shared governance meetings, that is a challenge that we have identified, is that when they were open and live, the doors were open and the times were published, and anyone could be in there, and you didn't have to be a member, and you could be recognized and offer your comments in any of our shared governance meetings, and we actively encourage that. Now that we have gone to virtual, we use Teams, and as such, the way Teams is set up is that you have a set of group of people that are invited to it. They get the link. It has the Teams link, and they join. We've identified that as that's a challenge for allowing open open forum or visitors or observers to participate in those. And so we're trying to address that and make sure that we solve that solution. We do still have our website where on our shared governance where we post the minutes of all of our meetings, but we recognize that is not the same as allowing people to participate. And that is a challenge that we have identified that we don't have a good solution to yet, but we are working on to get one, because we absolutely, our shared governance meetings only work when they're open. And so we will have a solution to that very soon to be able to do that.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go ahead and read out some of the other questions we have here. The quality of teaching is becoming a huge concern during this pandemic. How does UHCL administration plan to better the quality of teaching?
So I'll jump in. The provost had to step out for another pre-scheduled meeting, but what he has asked is that we keep track of these questions. Similar to the previous questions, he will answer those questions directly, just as we did the questions previously, and send those through SGA to disseminate to the student body.
Right, thank you. Let's see here.
And President Loy, I have a quick question. The questions that you're reading, are they from the chat, or can you keep track of them, or I can keep track of them? I just want to make sure that they get to the provost.
I'll go ahead and send you the questions for the provost.
Okay, good deal. Thank you so much.
No problem. So this would be another one for the provost. Other universities such as MIT, Stanford, Duke, and Georgetown have implemented alternative grading systems in light of COVID and the compulsory online learning format. Why is UHCL not implementing the satisfactory and unsatisfactory grading this semester, as many other campuses are still implementing this grading choice? Again, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that would be a question.
I'll jump in and just say the provost addressed this, and for those who just came on, in his third response to the third question in the first part, and that is at Clear Lake, we instituted the SU grading in the spring as a reflection of part of our response to the pivot that we had to make to fully, if you will, online. And because the summer was continued fully online, and we were still transitioning, it was maintained, but it was done so originally with the intent that for the fall semester and the 4 modes, we would return to our traditional grade scale.
Thank you, Dr. Beavers, but I think that I'm just going to jump in. I think that part of the issue that students are facing is that a vast majority of us are having to be in online classes that we don't necessarily want to be in online classes for. For instance, I'm a math major. Math is not taught well online, unfortunately. And all of my classes are online this semester, and it's really, really hard to learn. And I think there's a lot of students that are facing the same thing.
Also, somebody said that they've recently found out that the alternative grading does impact GPAs and therefore impacts financial aid. Why wasn't this disclosed originally?
When the policy was passed in the spring, we did have information to please consult with financial aid office as well as advisors before opting for that option.
Okay, our next question here says, and I think this is a very good question since I just got an email saying that the spring 2021 schedule is currently available online. What are UHCL's plans for next semester regarding classes, and will these plans be announced before tuition is due?
I can address some of that. Is that while I don't have answers to the specific question, I can guarantee you that we're actively planning on that, are planning for that, and we'll do everything we can to have our answers out as early as possible, and absolutely before tuition is due. UH Clear Lake, amongst the UH system, I just want to note, is that we are by far the most on campus of the 4 universities. We're delivering approximately 20% of our instruction on campus. UH is below 10%. UH Downtown is below 5%, and UH Victoria is below 5%. So I want to stress that we're doing everything we can. We recognize, and I clearly am stepping out a little bit of admin and finance and speaking more into the provost area, so forgive me. But we recognize that a lot of our instruction is still necessary for that engagement with our faculty and between our faculty and our students. We recognize that, and we are working very hard to be able to do that for the best service of our students, but with keeping in mind the protection of our faculty and our students and our staff. But I did want to add that, like I said, we are by far within the UH system, the most on-campus instruction by a significant margin.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Jenny. I have a question here that says, what should students do about the professors who explicitly state they want their students to be stressed and that we should be grateful for the pandemic because it makes it harder for the students?
I'll jump in. I'm unaware of those type of responses. I will say we do have a new Office of Student Advocacy that is through the Dean of Students Office. And so if students have individual or specific concerns, they can work through our Office of Student Advocacy, and we will reach out to those students to try and see how we can build some type of connection between the student and the faculty. The one thing I will say is, as we look at this pandemic, it's important to note that each of the colleges has dedicated either someone at the associate dean level or higher to actively engage with students. We started that about 6 months ago, and we've continued that process. All of our faculty and our deans and associate deans are actively involved in having one-on-one conversations with students to address these concerns. So just, if you have a specific concern, please shoot it to the Dean of Students email, and we will act as a liaison to make sure we get everyone on the same page.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hart. The next question we have here is, the workload for students is a lot more than when we were face-to-face. What is UHCL going to do to address this? I feel like this issue has been swept under the rug.
Again, I'll provide some response. In many instances, the pandemic has increased the workload for everyone, and I'm not trying to minimize the statement. Please rest assured that I'm not. In a conversation I had the other day, a person commented that they feel these last 6 months have drugged by and been very slow, and my response has been that has been the complete opposite. It's pretty rare, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people, that I get here in the morning at 7:30, and it's rare that I leave here before 8 o'clock. And I know that's a challenge across our campus, and I want to stress that we understand and are trying to address this the best we can for all of our students. We recognize, especially at our campus, more so than at campuses that have a more traditional student population, we have students that are not just, it is not just the impact of moving our courses online. It is the impact of children at home not being in classes. It is the impact of possibly lost employment, radically altered employment, and as well, it is possibly the challenges of caring for other family members. You stack all of these things together, and these are the experiences that our students are experiencing on a significantly greater scale than what you would find at a UT or someplace like that, where you have a much more traditional 18 to 24-year-old student population. And the best I can offer is that through continued engagement, through our processes that we have, and a genuine recognition of those and a sincere attempt to solve those is our best path forward. And while I obviously am not offering, here is what we're doing for this and here's what we're doing for that, but that I can offer, we will never stop addressing those challenges as they come up and working to find solutions. Because we recognize, our students have taken on a huge load, and it is not just this campus. It is or from their instruction. It is from, in many cases, every aspect of their life that has been modified and changed, and frequently been complicated. And that we will not stop working with our students to address those and find solutions where we can.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but I'll jump in because I really, on behalf of Faculty Senate, want to reinforce what Mr. Denny just said. And that is that we're not going to stop trying to find solutions. I'm an educator of educator and believe that reflective practice is how we grow and improve. And it's why efforts like the survey to collect student voices and concern so that we can target and tailor the improvements that we're trying to make yield positive outcomes for students, for faculty, and for staff. So I want to thank Mr. Denny for really pointing out that this is a process, and we respect that our students, our staff, and our faculty are just in an evolution of adapting and learning and improving and growing, and it's going to continue. But we hope as it continues, things do improve.
Sorry, I'm still on mute. Okay. The sudden change to face-to-face, the sudden change of face-to-face to online is not an easy transition, which is causing the course load problems the students are facing. Will there be any other grading options at all to accommodate both students and professors? There was also, I believe, somebody posted an article in the chat with many top-tiered universities that have switched their grading systems because of the pandemic. And while UHCL offers multiple modes of learning, many of us are forced into online classes because our core curriculum is only offered virtually. Please consider how this is impacting students across the board. Stanford's Faculty Senate initiated an alternate grading system. So I guess that would be another concern for the provost. The academic calendar says to be decided for graduation ceremonies. Is there an update on that?
I'll speak to that a little bit. That's really run through our enrollment management and under the provost's office. So he will have a more thorough answer. But for our fall graduation, the intent is to again do it virtually, and we're in the planning stages to be able to do that. And excuse me, and then we don't know for next spring graduation. We would obviously prefer to do it live and in person, and look at ways to take advantage of what we've learned from this and see how we can improve. But our current plan is for the fall ceremony to be virtual. I think we're going to look at some improvements and modifications from lessons learned from this past spring. But the nature of the pandemic still is paramount, and that we don't see the opportunity to go to a live graduation this soon.
Thank you so much for your answer, Mr. Denny. I'm looking at the questions here. Is financial aid changing their requirements and eligibility limits and caps with COVID-19. Over the summer, I qualified and was approved for a grant, was cleared to receive the funds, and then I received a disheartening call remarking that I actually did not qualify for such assistance. I personally have never understood how I can qualify through federal government for financial aid, but under UHCL financial aid eligibility limits, I do not.
I obviously can't address that with specifics and certainly not on a specific case, but I can say that there are very stringent both federal and state requirements for financial aid. The university has leeway in our discretionary dollars that we set aside for financial aid, but the vast majority of the dollars that we have are regulated. They're less so by the federal, the Pell Grant and things like that is more on the federal side. But our institutional dollars are heavily dictated by the state of Texas on the qualifications and requirements. And we, to the best benefit of our student, without violating those restrictions, we do apply those rules. But it's our financial aid office that I would have to defer to for a more specific answer. But we don't have a whole lot of flexibility in many of our dollars that we have in financial aid.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. There's a question here in the chat that reads, I understand the need to maintain the rigor in this shift to online classes, the struggle for faculty to be more efficient in their course delivery while taking into account the increased time and cognitive demands of online learning. Further, I understand the accreditation standards have to be met, the GPA requirements that would hamstring some students for some specific courses. However, giving students the choice while we are forced into classes and faculty is forced to teach in ways they do not learn seems important to students. As a senator, I have heard from many students who are struggling in their classes. Wouldn't providing the option to select one or two classes to fall under the satisfactory grading policy, while the other classes use the GPA, enable students to be more in control of their learning and ease their fears during this pandemic? Again, since we keep going to this topic, the provost is not here, so I don't think we can answer any questions regarding the satisfactory grading system at this meeting at this time. So I'm going to open the floor for students to ask questions about topics that are not the satisfactory grading system, so that way we can have a productive conversation instead of, yeah. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat, unmute your mic and speak up, or go ahead and submit your question anonymously through the link that Victoria has provided in the chat right there. How does the university's administrators decide whether an issue or concern brought up to the students is worth making changes to or ignoring? What is the process of prioritizing students' concerns?
I'll start with that. Well, the first answer is that none of them are ignored. We recognize that no question comes to us that isn't a very real and true situation at a minimum for that specific student, if not to a larger group. And so that is where, again, our shared governance process, our student advisory councils, all of those opportunities allow us to gauge the depth of the issue. Is it a specific isolated incident to one or a very small population or to a larger population? Is it a trend? Is it evidence of a systemic challenge across our campus? All of those things are things that we look at to try to determine what we do about it, not if we do something about it. We seek to address every issue that is brought up to us, which is back to one of the issues that Dr. Hart spoke about earlier. And he made the comment that he might have misspoken on me a bit. And that is when you recognize a challenge, you have to recognize it. Is it within your sphere of influence or your sphere of control? Meaning control, you can absolutely take direct action to change something influence, you can take direct action, but only to influence something. And it is important to understand those things because that guides what type of action you attempt to take to influence those challenges. And so we take through our shared governance process, through our student advisory councils, through all of those means, we endeavor to identify sphere of control, sphere of influence, and then what action is appropriate to be taken towards it.
I think the other thing I want to throw in, and I think this is really important, as I look at the chat box, I see 64 participants. As an administration, we are the administrators for the entire UHCL student body. And so when we get student concerns, we cannot look at those concerns in a vacuum. And so what I mean by that is for each student that may feel a certain way about a particular topic, you may have one of your peers that feels the exact opposite way. And so depending on what the issue is, and I'm speaking specifically for student affairs, we need to create avenues and create ways to listen to the entire student body, because what I have seen in my previous experience, you may have 10 students who just happen to be more vocal about an issue, but when we do a campus climate survey, we find out that those 10 students who have this concern do not actually speak for the entire campus. And when we start, assessing the entire student body, that issue that they have is not representative of what the majority of our students want. So to VP Denny's point, we do listen to all concerns when they are brought to us, and we try to address those. There are several factors that go into, what's prioritized. However, we must do our due diligence as administration for the entire campus to make sure we're involving as much of the student body as possible in those conversations.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Hart. So moving on to some questions that we have here in the chat. In our previous town halls concerning Black lives and current events, it was stated that admin is now prioritizing, quote, males of color. What progress has been made on that?
Absolutely. So let me speak to that. So one, I want to make sure we did not say we were prioritizing that particular group. It's just that group had reached out to us first and asked for a dialogue, asked for a safe space, and asked for a forum. One of the things that was mentioned is that those forums are actually being recreated right now as we speak, and you all and everyone, faculty, staff, and students will start to see emails for other identity groups who have also now reached out and said they would like to have the same forum. So I don't want to, say that any one group is more important than any other group. It was more of a timing issue, specifically with Black males or those who identify as Black men. The progress that has been made, in addition to the campus-wide group, the group has actually met twice. We had our initial town hall, and then there was a second meeting last week. And so the progress that's been made to this point is we're actually getting together a list of action items for view and for review on campus. I will also tell you that group is actively working to provide mentoring opportunities on campus for faculty, staff, and students. And you'd be surprised that even a senior level administrator may want to be mentored by someone. So we're providing mentoring opportunities. HR and Dr. McGonigal has been active in supporting these initiatives. And so if there are concerns that rise up to an HR perspective, Dr. McGonigal has said that he is fully in support of making sure that proper practices and policies are being followed. And the last thing I will note, I'll note that VP Denny may want to elaborate on this, but really excited that our Chief Miller and VP Denny have also participated in a separate Black male discussion group to tackle some of these issues and to hear from our perspectives to implement some changes on campus as well. So I appreciate VP Denny and Chief Miller being available for that. And one of the things I really want to note, in the first couple of town halls, we kept saying We don't know who our officers are. We want to see our officers so we can trust our officers. And we had a meet and greet, and it was well attended. So we have tangible things that have taken place since the very first town hall that we're proud of. Now, does that mean that we're at the end? No, we still have so much to do. We have so much to do, but we are keeping our commitment. We may not move as fast as others want us to move, but at least when we were asked that question the first time, we didn't have an answer. And I think that as an administration, we weren't very proud of that. But now we do have answers, and it's not going to stop. We're going to keep going.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. It seems like we have a follow-up. Okay, I'm going to not read the first sentence. So are you going, please keep in mind that these are not my words.
Oh.
Okay, like I'm reading something, I'm not saying this to you. So are you going to dismiss people who are asking for change repeatedly in favor of students who benefit from status quo?
Absolutely not. We never, ever dismiss anyone. But what you do is you have a dialogue. That's the thing. Not everyone has to agree, okay? And that's the great thing, about civic engagement. I always tell people, and this goes for it goes for our president, it goes for the VPs. We are administrators for every single student on this campus. So no one will ever be dismissed. But what we will do is provide forums for, those who disagree, so we can have that dialogue and figure out the best way to move forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The comment is coming from what you said earlier about how there's a few students that are making these complaints and they don't represent the student body at large. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, yeah.
I don't believe he said
that's not what I said.
Okay,
they don't represent. He said, when you do your research, you may find, as example, that a small population that is vocal does not represent. That was an example, not what we have found. We're endeavoring, every voice is listened to and counts, and then we take that and then do the work to find out how widespread. As I made mention, Dr. Hart made mention, is it evidence of a broader concern? Is it evidence of a systemic problem? You do that work to understand those things, and then you set about on an action with a conversation ongoing.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a few more questions here. Let's see. Given that Indigenous Peoples Day just occurred, which was October 12th, what is UHCL doing to acknowledge the land upon which the university sits? It's also been pointed out that the university is still profiting off of the land. So what are we doing to acknowledge the land and its origins?
Yeah, I can offer certainly one example and a promise that we continue to be committed to any avenue that tells the truth and the history of our Indigenous people in this area. As I hope most of you are aware, we currently have a project initiated by Harris County to add a bike path on our campus. Construction is ongoing. If you're coming to campus at all, you absolutely have seen it. It goes past several places on our campus that we had previously set up. We had a raised boardwalk, a gazebo over the bayou and the overflow into Horsepen Bayou. We are working with Environmental Institute of Houston for some environmental placards and informational boards to demonstrate the natural history of the area. And we have already started an initiative to identify history of the Indigenous people of this area. And even though there may not be specific sites on our campus of encampments and things like that with the Indigenous people, that is still to this history of this area, because the history of the Indigenous people in this area was semi-nomadic, and they would have camps that they would move from with the seasons. And so you didn't have necessarily large permanent structures when white people first came to this area, but you do have that history, and we are working to be able to put up those boards as well across all of our nature trails and environments across our campus, to be able to educate people of the history of our indigenous people. That's one example, and we will continue to pursue any others opportunities that we have to give that education and history.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Jenny. I feel like I'm a little backlogged on the questions that are in the chat here. How is administration properly reaching out to said identities when they are inaccurately documented? I can personally say that my identity was chosen for me by UHCL as well as many other students.
That's a new one for me. I would encourage, and I don't know, VP Denny, if you know, but I'm assuming that goes through the registrar's office as far as how students are identified. But if there's a specific concern, you're more than welcome to send me an email and reach out to me, and I can work with you personally on that to provide a response.
It says that the registrar says that they don't document that.
The best I can offer, again, this is a specific case that I don't know the particulars on, so I obviously can't answer to that. But in general, all of our information that we gather and use on our students is collected at the time of enrollment and admission to the university, and it certainly should be all self-provided by the student and not provided by anybody at the university. And so if that happened, regardless, isolated incident or more systemic, I do want us to identify that and try and get to the solution. On the individual case, as Dr. Hart has offered, if we can get that to him, then we will absolutely take action on it. There shouldn't be that type of information on anybody that isn't something that the individual doesn't support.
I believe it says here that they self-provide and then UHCL selects what works for them.
The only thing I can say to that is not our process and how it should work. And so we definitely need to look at that on a broader, certainly on the isolated, identify what exactly happened. I certainly know that we try in all of our information that we collect, that there is a list of items and then an other that people can put something if the list doesn't apply. And it's always voluntary. You can choose to not answer the issue as well. There shouldn't be a case where we edit those responses. And so we will want to dig to the bottom of this.
Thank you. Oh, someone said, I have known multiple people who this has happened. It tends to be more of an issue for those who are not just one single race. I'm going to move on to the next point right here. I really agree with Dr. Hart's statement. It's extremely difficult to find a comprehensive assessment of student concerns when every student in this chat is going to have significantly higher campus engagement than the mean. With that being said, is there anything that can be done on a course level to increase classroom engagement? In my work at the Writing Center, there is an odd dichotomy between people saying that they miss the classroom and collaborative environment, yet student involvement in all non-course based events that I have attended at least has plummeted. What can be done to increase community engagement while we remain online?
Well, the first thing I'll say, oh, sorry, Dr. Hart, please go ahead.
I was just going to say we're feeling that challenge, and I think VP Denny mentioned this earlier, and I also think Dr. Beavers mentioned this. Something says we're in this with you all as students. I just want you to know, the faculty and the staff, everything that you're feeling, I can assure you, we are feeling it as well, personally, professionally, and it is really a challenge to get that engagement, because that's what we're all about. Not just, student affairs, but our faculty are about engagement. Everyone's about engagement. So what we're doing is we're really trying our hardest to work through social media and some of the online tools to let students know that even though, you know, we are not in person like we previously were, we're still trying to continue a lot of our programs and services virtually online and trying to get the word out. And I know there's only so much you can do, but I'll just specifically speak for some of the programs in student affairs. We try to cut and paste those programs into a virtual environment. And I know it's not as effective, but we still try to make those opportunities available because certain colleges and universities have just stopped doing everything. You know, and you know, if you can't do it in person, we're not going to even try and do it virtually. So at least we're still trying to do it virtually. So I'm only answering that question to the extent of some of our programs and activities, not necessarily for the classroom portion. I don't know if anyone else wants to address the classroom portion.
Well, I was just going to say that I think this is the absolute evidence of the overwhelming circumstance that many of our students find themselves in. And it's not just their engagement with our campus, it's their engagement with every other aspect of their life has become more complicated, more challenging. And our students are doing what any rational person would do. They're addressing those most immediate things, and they're letting other things that are less immediate go by the side. And what we need to do as a campus is find paths, and this is not easy, but we need to continue to do this, find paths to first give solutions to our students, to as many challenges as we can, and simple solutions, and then find paths, as Dr. Hart was just addressing, to engage easily. Because if we make it hard, our students will say, I have 20 things biting at my heels right now. I can't take on a 21st if it's not simple and direct. And those are things that we will continue to work towards because we recognize those challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. Is it possible to post more stuff like this on Blackboard rather than email, or is that not possible? I know enhanced visibility may not produce a ton of results, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who would attend this meeting but aren't aware of it. Someone said, I agree, it's not promoted well. I try my best to promote this. But I mean, I guess that would be a me thing. No, it's okay. You're okay. It's difficult engaging students during this time. We have a limited reach with our social media. We send out email blasts to the entire student body, and most students consider it spam, and then don't really like pay attention to our emails. But I will go ahead and consider trying to see if we can get this stuff up on Blackboard. Thank you for letting me know.
One other thing I do want to make note of, back to the concept of being in person and being virtual. Even though we are in this environment as a campus, we are still treating this as if everyone is on campus and everyone is welcome to campus. And President Loya, as you know, we have continued to, produce our swag. We're encouraging our students to come to campus and get their t-shirts. That's right. We have new voting t-shirts. VP Denny has graciously committed resources to this. And why this is important is because we don't want to think that just because students aren't here, that we don't need to do this. We're doing what it takes to get students to continue to know this is their home. So any students on this call, please come to campus, go to the new SSCB building, pick up your shirts. There's about 7 different styles of shirts because we expect our students to be here and be involved, walk around, do whatever, come to campus. And thank you, VP Denny, for your support of that t-shirt initiative.
Thank you. Also, somebody brought up a point, if we could encourage professors to get students to check their emails regularly. I will say about posting our events on Blackboard, it is more of an educational forum for professors to communicate with students. I don't really think it's much of a forum for like student organizations to post their announcements, but I'll try and see what we can do about that. But thank you so much for your feedback. I really do appreciate it. There is a concern about ProctorU in the chat, and I just want to address this really quickly. The concerns about ProctorU have been noted and presented to the proper committees that are dealing with this issue. They've also been presented to the provost, but unfortunately he is not here to address this right now, but we did address this in the beginning. There will be other proctoring methods available soon. So we can get that question answered for you a little bit later, but thank you so much. Let's see, we have a question here. I understand that a vocal few do not represent the entire school, but also they are student leaders and represent many students who don't feel comfortable coming forward. Why is it that others can represent Blake and other missing VPs, but these students can't represent their peers?
They absolutely can. That is the whole concept of our shared governance and our student government association. That is absolutely the goal, is that our student leaders represent their constituents. And we absolutely want to encourage that. And like I said, that's the function of how our shared governance works, is through that constituent representation, and it absolutely does.
Also, oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, I was reading the questions. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Denny. My second question is about the statement that most students don't share these concerns or have conflicting concerns in the vocal few that regularly attend these town halls. That question is, when looking over this data, does the administration take the culture of apathy on campus? Anyone who has been in a leadership position in a student organization or tried to get students to get on a committee knows many students just go to class and then leave campus.
This is Dr. Hart's area of expertise, but that's absolutely, anybody who's been in higher education recognizes that that's a constant challenge, is that students have busy lives, and getting them to, and incentivizing them to be engaged beyond their class, their academic requirements, is always a challenge. But we have demonstrated that provides support for those students, and so we continue to push for that and recognize that.
So let me, VP Denny took the words out of my mouth. That whatever student made that comment was spot on, 100% spot on. That's why college campuses do what's called a climate survey, an extensive, thorough campus climate survey. And we were on pace to do a campus climate survey to address these issues so we could hear from the masses spring of 2019. And needless to say, we know what happened. And I want to be clear, we didn't postpone the survey only because of COVID and the changing, modes of instruction and just the challenges, but also the responses would have been skewed. The responses of how are you feeling, how do you view the campus may not necessarily be related to, how students were feeling before the pandemic, but more so around how the pandemic is affecting them. And so what we'd rather do is we're going to have the climate survey this spring, so spring of 2021. I know we will still be dealing with some of the COVID-19 concerns, but we're at a place now where we can ask students to reflect on their experiences maybe a year removed from the start of the pandemic. So we will have a campus climate survey that will be instituted. It'll be a full campaign to make sure we hear from as many of our Hawks as possible, and this will take place in spring of 2021.
Right, and we have just Senator Skates saying, I know that we still have a lot of growing to do as a university, and I want to take a moment to say thank you to UHCL administrators for taking steps to move us forward. I value and appreciate those of you who are listening to our needs and working with us to help create solutions. I know that I hope this has not created like a hostile environment for administration, because that is by no means the intention. Students just get passionate about their concerns. If students don't participate in these surveys, then what's the next step?
And just thank you so much for that comment. Remember, we were all students too. And as I look back, I'm pretty sure that I probably did cause problems for our administration down in Carbondale, Illinois, but that's a whole nother story. We can talk about that later. No, that's a great point. Obviously, so when you have a targeted survey like a campus climate survey, it's one of those type of surveys that administration, faculty, staff, the registrar's office, the entire campus, reaches out to students. It's kind of like the census, because I had the census person come to my door 12 times, even though I kept saying I filled out the census. It's kind of one of those things where we do our best to get every single student during SGA meetings an announcement. Did you take the campus climate survey? So we provide as many opportunities as possible. However, you're 100% correct. We can't, we're not going to get 100% participation. But to answer your question directly, once we see the percentage of student responses, then we will determine what the next steps are. If we get, what entities like Campus Labs or EAB, if we get that institutional effectiveness, if we get that percentage of students that we feel is statistically representative, then we can determine that as an accurate representation of the student body. If not, we will need to make other choices. And so when you ask what are the next steps, that is one we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it if we don't get enough participation. But that's a great question.
Thank you. We have a question here that says, what is the process to report issues that cause mobility issues on campus? What is being done to create a campus that is more accessible? How do we ensure that universal design is being considered during the design and construction phases before having to take the money to correct issues that could have been fixed during those phases?
I'll take that question. I'll start with the last and go backwards, I guess. As our construction design, we've not had any new construction since President Blake has gotten here. All of our projects were in process, our most recent ones. But one of the things that she has absolutely initiated, and there's obviously strong support across our campus leadership, is that if you look at the American with Disabilities Act, it sets standards, and I can guarantee you there won't be a building built on this campus that doesn't meet those standards. But she has made it very clear that is not our goal. That is not our target. That is a floor, not an aspirational. That is the bare minimum. That is not where we shoot ourselves for on all of the access on all of our buildings. To that end, we have engaged in the early planning stages, or we've set a priority for every project that we do across campus. In the early stages, our Student Accessibility Support Services Office and our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in all of our projects across our campus, they are engaged early on to make sure that we are not failing to give those considerations of accessibility for all of our students in all of those planning projects that we initiate across our campus. The next issue is, I referenced this a little bit earlier in the prepared questions that we had at the start of this town hall, is that we have an initiative that came from our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to create a student ambassadors that's what I'll call them right now, as we're in our early planning phase. It's not been completed, but that they will have many resources at their disposal. I will give a couple examples, but recognize that this is still in its early planning phase, is that we are looking at small vehicles, like golf carts types of things, that, but yet we still have a wheelchair ramp and so forth, to be able to help students move from one building to another. As our campus has now grown, that where in the past we were pretty much all concentrated within Bayou Building, but with the STEM, the Rec and Wellness Center, Hunter Residence Hall, things like that, and now at Pearland with 2 different buildings there, we have the added challenge of those students being able to, within often short periods of time, have to move from one building to another to attend their classes, and recognizing that the challenge of that. As we are not vertical in our parking, we are horizontal. Often the distance to travel between where your parking is and where your academic class is can be a significant distance. And so we're looking at all of those opportunities and making sure that this initiative that's coming forward gives us the ability to address those things. And again, provide that accessibility for all of our students, not just for the students that don't have some of these challenges.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denny, for sharing. And thank you, Dr. Beavers, because I see your comment. I'm going to go ahead and read a question that we have here. I'm still a new student, but it's been my clear observation so far that a majority of faculty don't take the time to post, announce, advertise, and encourage grade points to engage in campus life and activities, even in a virtual setting. I think it's because they feel it's not important to them. How can administration truly address faculty engagement in student, non-academic student engagement?
Is that an I heard faculty and I heard non-academic.
I think they're looking at how do faculty encourage the co-curricular activities and engagement that are our initiatives within our student affairs. And I think, and I know you can speak this better, but the 4 pillars and how we're integrating that with our academic programs is part of that.
I'll take a stab at this, and if there are any faculty on the call that would like to, correct me if I'm wrong, please feel free to do so. I will say we're 45 years young, but one of the things I've been most impressed with is that our faculty were actually leading the way on this campus in co-curricular activities. As we have created the new 4 pillars of student engagement, which we're starting to implement this academic year, and we have started to look at supporting programs and activities for student engagement, we have found that a lot of our faculty are currently, providing opportunities in the classroom to support students' holistic and co-curricular learning. And this has been the case since UHCL has been here. So you don't find it at other college campuses. Normally the faculty, stay away from that, but our faculty here are extremely engaged in the co-curricular process and have been since the inception of this university. So when we implemented the 4 pillars of student engagement, the faculty said, yeah, okay, tell us something we don't know. We've already been doing it. So they have been and will continue to be active in that process, which is really unique to this campus. So if you're not, as a student, if you're not seeing that right now, and you are a new student, maybe, and I'm just making the assumption, maybe that's the current environment that we're in with COVID and which has some challenges. But as always, with any student, you can reach out to me directly and I can do my best to assist you with that engagement. But our faculty here are definitely supporters and actively involved in the co-curricular process.
I will say that this is me talking as a student now. In my experience here, I'm a senior. I've been actively involved, and throughout my 4 years here, I have only had one professor that has encouraged me to join a student organization, that has encouraged me to attend meetings, and that has shown me how extracurricular activities will be beneficial for me in my career. This is not a normal thing for professors, but we can go ahead and move on. Somebody asked, I think this was based on something Mark Denny was saying, does that include electric charging ports no one asked for? But I'm not sure what that is in reference to. So I'm gonna move on.
I'm gonna guess it's the recent upgrades to furniture in Bayou and the charging stations. I guess I would say in the working groups that we have had with students on our furniture selections, and that was repeated numerous times from students that they wanted to see more opportunities to charge devices and things like that. We did that. I certainly see the use of these charging stations. Now, granted, we still have a challenge in that we have to install some electrical outlets that aren't currently there. And so to get anything more than a feet away from the pillars, you have to daisy chain them together. And so but that's a project that's not yet been completed. So certainly the feedback and the active engagement we did to get student input, there was a strong call for additional charging opportunities. And so that was the solution.
Thank you. And I'm gonna go ahead and read this last comment and end on a lighter note. In my HSH courses, I've had many professors encourage participation and announce campus events in class. I appreciate this about my professors and recognize it has changed during COVID. And it says, was he not talking about chargers for electric vehicles?
The charging stations for electrical vehicles was a campus initiative. We had engaged students, but I admit there weren't large calls for those. But those were an opportunity that they were given to us for free, and we only have to pay. We didn't even have to pay for the installation, but just we have to pay for the electrical consumption, and that is part of our initiatives. There was an earlier question about what are we doing to reduce our carbon footprint and encouraging sustainable practices. And again, it goes back to that balance that we have to do with accessibility on our campus and affordability. And had we had to pay for those charging stations, you wouldn't see them on our campus right now. But since that was not a cost to us, and the energy consumption that is potentially going to be utilized by them, again, is part of the university's value of pushing forward on sustainable practices. And so, and this gets back to a comment that Dr. Hart mentioned, that you'll have one student that feels very strongly and another student that feels very strongly in the exact opposite direction. And that is the balance that we try to do. And so sometimes we make small movements on fronts because we're trying to balance all of those competing opinions and viewpoints.
Right. Somebody said it cost us parking spaces though, which has been a problem, and we still don't recycle, so sustainability doesn't seem like a major concern for administration.
We do recycle. I'm always curious where it comes up in numerous that there is a viewpoint that we don't recycle. Now, do we recycle as much as some people would like us to? I'm guarantee we don't. We recycle to the extent that is feasible. And yes, parking is a challenge, and we are continuing to work forward on challenging on that. We have a student advisory council on our parking that they were presented with the opportunity of the charging stations and provided feedback and comment on that. And we encourage the continuation of that dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denny. I have a question. Is anybody here on this meeting in charge of parking tickets?
Yes, parking reports up to me.
Can we not give out parking tickets during a pandemic since we have so much available parking?
We also have to continue to pay for parking. We discounted for that reason because of the pandemic. We discounted 50% of the cost of a parking permit for those people who come to campus. We still have, if you're only coming very sporadically, we have a very inexpensive guest parking process that you can pay for when you come here only intermittently. And so parking, we're doing everything we can to lower the cost of parking, but we still have to pay for the maintenance of those parking lots for our students that drive the shuttle service. All of that we still have those costs. So we cannot just waive parking. We did that for spring semester and summer semester, but to continue to do that, we wouldn't have been able to keep our student employed that work in our parking department. And so again, it's all a balance.
Okay, thank you. That was a me question. Yeah, I feel like it's an unnecessary deterrent, at least for people who use the rec center, is what somebody said. Guests, etc. Okay, so with that, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up because we are, it is getting close to noon. I hope that this conversation gave students an opportunity to, I think, okay, I'm going to read this really quickly before my opening remarks. I think the viewpoint that we do not recycle comes from the fact that buildings like Bayou Building, Delta, and Arbor Building, and SSAB, arguably the most populated on campus, do not have clearly sortable recycling bins like those in the rec center and the STEM building. The inconsistency is what drives the idea that we do not recycle, in my opinion at least. For years, this has been an issue brought up and little has been done to address it outside of the new buildings. And also about the committee, someone that was chair for the committee doesn't recall the conversation. But now I will close, unless you want to add anything, Mr. Denny. Okay, I hope that this conversation gave students an opportunity to voice their concerns and feel heard. As I mentioned last time, I am committed to ensuring that this conversation continues and creates a tangible change in our UHCL community. We have one more town hall for the fall 20 semester. This will take place via Zoom from 10 a.m. to noon on November 13th. The upcoming town hall will be coordinated by the SGA Senate. Please reach out to your college senators and tell them about your experience at UHCL. We have a few senators on this call, so if they could drop their contact information in the chat so people could contact them, that would be greatly appreciated. Between town halls, SGA will continue to meet with our committed administration to find student-driven solutions to your concerns. SGA will continue to push and provide a safe space where we can normalize these conversations and normalize the push and pull, the push and actual action towards making change. Thank you for your support and your participation, and thank you to the entire core leadership team for prioritizing the students and what we need. Thank you to all those who shared their concerns and experiences. We look forward to continuing this discussion throughout the school year. Don't forget to follow us on social media to see what's happening. Please feel free to submit any lingering questions to any of SGA social media that I will now put in the chat. Oh, I only sent it to Miles. Whoops.
And students, please come to the org lounge and pick up your t-shirts. They're yours.